All right, people, welcome to another episode of Natty News Daily. We've got a special guest from, I don't know how many ponds across are you, but you're quite far away, my man, all the way from Australia.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself to the people,
Thanks
buddy,
for
and then
having
we'll dive on in.
Okay. My name's Evan. I'm a natural pro bodybuilder. Been bodybuilding, been lifting weights since 2002. Been competing since 2009. Pro with the WNBF. So turned pro at the World Championships by winning the heavyweight class 2011. And since then, I've competed in 2 pro seasons in 2014. Managed to place 5th, so top 5 in the World Championships for WNBF there. I won an PNBA show that year as well. I think it was PNBA World Cup in California. And then did a 2017 season as well. Not as many pro, no pro placings actually that year. That was a difficult year in terms of just, I think, the quality of the competitors. But probably my best condition to date in that year.
And that actually brings up a good question. You've seen a big difference in quality throughout the years, because obviously you've been competing longer than, well, maybe not longer than Leroy, but myself for sure.
Yeah. I think even in, I've had other coaches. Like I remember Paul Revelia was just in a casual conversation to me one time, noting that he would have found it hard this was like 2016, I think, to turn pro at that point. I think he had won his pro card, I think from memory, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, earlier on than me, in a different natural federation. But I think just the quality over time has gotten better in both the amateurs and the pros. Everybody kind of knows now that they really have to get in condition. And I think there's a lot more information available online and stuff. Coaches are everywhere. So people are really, I guess, bringing it to the table at least in the big shows, in the smaller shows, although in the last couple of years, I've been kind of a bit out of the loop in terms of bodybuilding. I've been studying and that type of thing. So I haven't been to a lot of shows in the last few years, but just from what I see online, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you see a lot of striated glutes on amateur stages now, which is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I would say around the time that I was first competing, like that would be a little bit more rare. And if you were in that condition, you'd be like in an amateur show, you'd be winning or placing in the top 2 or 3 for sure. And if you did a big show, you might win a pro card. Like you had a pretty good chance. Now it's like, well, you'll still be up there, if you've got a decent physique. But yeah, it's getting harder because there might be like several more people with also good physiques and also quite lean.
So what's the bodybuilding scene like over in Australia then? Because obviously it sounds like you've come over to the States quite a bit to actually compete. Do they do fair number of amateur shows? The pro shows not quite as. Or what's the WNBF? Does WNBF have in Australia?
When I started out, WNBF was one of the natural federations here. And so I just happened to do it coincidentally because my friend was doing a show and it was just 5 minutes from my house. So I just did the show. I didn't even do any prep for it or anything like that, really. I just found out a week ahead and I'm like, oh, cool. Like that'd be really good to do because I was like relatively lean and it was just like a fun show to do. And then I kind of just like kept going and took it more seriously over time. As I got into it, the competing side of things. But yeah, so we had WNBF, we had INBA, which is like, the amateur PNBA, all related to that. We had ANB, which I don't think that's just Australian Natural Bodybuilding, which has been a long running federation here. And yeah, I think that was pretty much it for that period of time. And now I think it's kind of similar, but the INBA we now have different people running INBA, and the people that were running INBA are now something called ICN, which is fairly popular as well. I think probably the biggest federations are ICN, ANB. WNBF doesn't really exist here anymore. I think there is a federation there's like a men's one and a women's one, like AWNBF or something like that for women. I'm not sure of the name of the men's one. And I think that's kind of like up and coming. I think they're an affiliate of the WNBF, but I'm not up on whether that's still the case. That was the case a few years ago. So there's a few federations around, and there's one NBA, which has come up in the last couple of years. And I'm not sure whether they also run amateur shows, but they've kind of like, if you have a pro card in a natural bodybuilding federation, you can compete in their shows. So it's kind of like all the pros can come together from different federations and do their show.
I kind of like that setup for select shows. It seems like it draws a good crowd.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, they were always, earlier on, they were talking about like in America and stuff, they were always talking about like a super show. But it seems like
the Mr. America this year it's still growing, I'd say, to the point where it's considered a super show, but it's a top show on a lot of people's targets. I mean, we just talked with Brandon Wattis the other day, and that's his top show on his list. So,
all right. And
I don't know if you know Brandon or not.
No, don't know of him. Sorry, did you say, what was his last name?
Wattis.
Oh, yeah, I know of him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know him personally, but for sure I know of him.
Yeah, we just talked to him. Yeah, what, 2 days ago?
Yeah.
And Mr. America is top on his list over like the Yorton and other shows too. So, which is interesting. Cool.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up on all the shows that you guys have going on over there. I suppose, I know of the Yorton. There's like the IF. What is it? Sorry. There's one that I know Alberta, my current coach, did in 2017. Starts with an I think. That was another big one.
It's not IPE, is it?
Oh, IPE Worlds.
IPE is big in the Midwest, I would say, of the United States, because he's in Colorado right now, I think. Yeah. It's big in the Midwest. They don't run because I had thought about competing in the IPE, but I don't know if it's going to be quite in the cards just due to, I mean, it's not really that far to travel, but there's so many other like WNBF, OCB shows that are in much closer proximity, like driving proximity for me. So.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. That makes a big difference. I mean, whenever you have to fly somewhere and then, accommodation, whether it's Airbnbs or whatever, it kind of throws you a little bit more.
Yeah.
And if you can just drive there or something like that.
Yeah. And I think some of the IP shows would probably be drivable, but like they're just a little bit further. Like for me, I guess I'm spoiled because the Yorton is in Pittsburgh and I live 20 minutes north of Pittsburgh. So it's super close.
Oh, okay.
And then like New York City is only like a 7-hour drive, 6-hour drive or so. So yeah, I've got lots of, good shows, WNBF, OCB shows within 6 hours. So where I might have to drive like 8 or 10 to like Chicago would probably be about 7 or 8 hours probably. I think they run some shows in Chicago, but and then some other locations too. But what about you? Or do you usually have to fly around, or do you have to driving distance for you, or for in Australia?
Yeah, I guess if it is in Australia, a lot of the shows I would often do would be in Sydney. So where I'm originally, an hour or so that usually get there. So really not too bad. And I've done a show in Melbourne where I'm actually currently living, but I just flew down for that one. So I mean, a lot of the, our country in terms of flights, it's not really like, I don't really know of, I'm sure they have shows over on the other side of the country too.
There's no need to, it sounds like.
Don't hear about them a lot, but like I think that's only right.
How do you manage flying to the States and stuff when it comes to competing? Because obviously, like, do you try to travel a couple days beforehand, or how do you manage all that?
Well, I mean, I've done it differently a couple of times. So let me think. 2014 was a while ago. I remember being pretty hungry in 2011. I was prepping with that year. And so I said the next time when I was prepping with Alberta, I said, look, I just need more food, because it's kind of like you skip a day, you're flying at like 6 a.m. in the morning, typically, is when I always seem to arrive. And then so you've kind of like used your macros already. I like just ate like nothing.
Yes, you're almost eating like a day's worth of food in like a day and a half sort of thing. It sounds like. Is that kind of
something like that? Yeah, exactly. And so we did it that way. And I had always traveled a little bit ahead. I think the first time I might have traveled just a week ahead. And I think that's pretty sufficient. But sometimes I think 2014, I might have traveled like 2 or 3 weeks ahead. And the same in 2017. I think 2017 was more so that I could do a couple of shows, because obviously they're not always just week to week. You might have to wait 3 weeks between shows. I always wanted to do WMBF Worlds as my last show, and then do another show before that. And I picked, different ones, different years. I did the Yorton in 2017, and 2014 I did that PNBA show.
And from my experience,
kind of
traveling,
because
go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I just left it at that because otherwise I'd be paying accommodation to live there for like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like difficult to manage.
Yeah, and I've always found the traveling, or at least from my experiences, the traveling east is worse than going west. So like, yeah, because you kind of fly east, and then like it should be time for you to go to bed, and it's like, well, nope, it's morning. But yeah, that could definitely be an adjustment, especially with just all the stress of prep and the tail end of prep. Like, yeah, that's quite a bit. Yeah, the week plus in advance is smart, that's for sure, for that type of trip.
Yeah, because thankfully I haven't really experienced it too much on the flight, like when I'm kind of like just before a show. I've never experienced like the water retention, but I have really experienced it in other times coming back to Australia, and it takes a couple of days for that puffiness to like almost like edema or whatever it is to kind of go down. So yeah, I don't think it would be a really good idea to fly like, ideally a couple of days before a show or anything like that. Unless you had to, that was like your only choice due to work or something like that. But ideally, I think you would be best. Most people would be best doing it if you were doing a long flight from one country to another country, is to do that at least a week ahead. Because you need to settle in. You've kind of got to like peak through all that period. You don't really want to be wanting to like fly around and travel and like while you're trying to peak and it's a in the last couple of days, like a very fluid process. It's always changing. So yeah, you don't need to be traveling during that time. You need to be relaxed during that time, I think.
What's the longest flight you've taken for a show?
For a show, it would to America, it's always been to America. So it's like typically I think about 14 hours to get to LA. So sometimes I've just flown to LA and stayed in LA and trained at like Gold's Venice for like, a week or two, and then kind of like headed to, in 2017, I actually stayed with Alberto for a little bit before going then to Worlds.
Yep.
So sometimes I just kind of broke it up, but I think probably 2011 would have been that longest one, because I flew to LA and then I had to get another flight to New York.
Oh, wow.
That's a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that second leg of your trip, because I competed in my 2018 season in LA. That second leg of your trip was my whole trip, and that was like stressful for me. So.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I think it's just something you have to bear, and I guess do within your own levels of practicality, because if you're not, say, working as a coach where you can just be like, well, I'll just go and work anywhere, you might have to be like, apply for leave from your job. Then you can't necessarily just take unlimited time off, but you might be able to take a week or two off. So you've got to kind of like just manage it within reason, but
plan ahead. It's a good time to use if you have vacation time with your company. It's a good time. It's a good time to use it. That's for sure. I agree with that.
Definitely. And then just put all that stress a little bit away from the show, because it is going to be stressful if you have to do a long trip. But don't make it more stressful than you have to. Just kind of tolerate it.
Yeah, it's just kind of comes with the territory.
So what are your next competitive plans?
Yeah, definitely.
What's your next?
Well, good question. I'm still kind of considering that, and I think the situation in the world is a little bit of a. We'll have to see how it goes. You know what I mean? Because we don't know. I don't even know if I can travel overseas at the moment and that type of thing. In terms of, say, like, the idea would have been to do next year. And I actually only just started up coaching again with Alberto. I was just doing all my own training and nutrition and that type of thing. And so I've kind of, like, in my own mind, I had two different ideas. One would be, because I think, to put a little bit of extra context in place, I've had a couple of years where I kept training really hard, but I didn't put everything into bodybuilding in the last few years, because I was also studying my post-grad and working full-time and stuff at the same time. So I've probably just like lost a little bit of muscle, and I've been really trying hard to gain it back. So either I kind of maybe try to drop down a weight class and kind of like prep maybe next year from this weight and see if I could, get just like really, really, really lean, maybe more than I have in the past. And I just don't know if it were like a WNBF Worlds type of thing, whether I could actually, I don't think due to my height that I'd ever be able to make it down to middleweight.
Right.
So that's one idea, is try to get just super lean and see how I go as a taller guy in that type of thing, or probably spend more time and do a later year. And I think we have to see how it goes, because if I can't travel, then that plan's just off the table. I have.
Is there any indication of like you guys dropping some of like the mandates? I've seen some of your stories, and it's crazy to me that how authoritarian that.
It's pretty bad.
A lot of governments have come, but yes, I mean, it seems like it's really bad there.
Yeah, I think the situation here is good in some ways, in that we really don't have that many cases, and we don't have we actually, until like last weekend, we had 0 deaths until last weekend. We had 1 death of one person aged in their 90s last weekend. So that's in 2021. So it's like been pretty good here, but they're really strict at the same time. So this current lockdown that is happening in my city as of last night, they're doing it for like a week, and it's because we had a handful of cases. Like, I don't know if it was like 11 total cases, but per day it's like 2 new cases, that type of thing. So they're being super strict and like not really in line with, I think, what probably other countries are doing. And so, we're kind of like in and out of lockdown. Up in Sydney, they've had like a longer lockdown for about maybe 5 or 6 weeks at the moment. So it is really strict. In terms of what their plan is, I believe they want to have, again, really high standards, like vaccinate like 80% of the population or something along those lines before they will allow people, I think probably only vaccinated people, to participate in things like travel internationally, although I'm not sure if that will depend on the entry country's requirements more than our country's requirements. I'm not sure exactly how it will all be played out, because all I've seen is a press conference a couple of weeks ago where they kind of like alluded to a rough plan, but they haven't given the strict guidelines yet. So that's kind of where we're at. But I always figured I could also just compete in Australia, maybe even do like that NBA show if I want to do a pro show. There might be other pro shows like the ICN. I can compete with them as a pro as well. I've got like a pro card with them from when I competed a few years ago. So there are options to do that, and maybe even do like, maybe just do like a national level amateur show potentially as well, you know, if that's kind of like on the cards as well. So
when you guys got put back into lockdown again, we just got kind of the next green light for us to come out. Gyms officially reopened today, actually.
Really?
Yeah, and it's been 5 or 6 months since the most recent closure. But man, you were saying like 2 or 3 cases a day. We were 4,000 a day at one point.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. It's been a nightmare up here. So I can feel your pain. That's for sure.
So what do? Do you have like a home gym personally, or?
Yeah, I'd say I've got an okay setup, eh, Dan?
Yeah, home gym doesn't do it justice.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate.
No.
But a lot of people, like, you know, gyms have been closed on and off here for the last 2 years, basically. And, you know, we had a stint last fall where things opened up a little bit, that they were able to run shows. And then now, going into August, we're hopeful that shows can start running again. But same thing, like you said, they had like a vaccination requirement. So like we had to get 80% or something like that with their first vaccination, and then, you know, 50% double vaccinated. So it's chaos, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's so it's really hard to predict. Like, I mean, usually I plan this stuff like years ahead, but this time it's, unless I plan to just go, well, you know, I will definitely not compete next year and compete, you know, 3 or 4 years from now, then I could probably plan it out. But otherwise, it's really hard to say. Another fun thing that I was thinking, because my girlfriend, she competes in bikini. We were even thinking, just as more of a fun thing rather than as a, like, I'd still take the prep seriously, of course, but rather than like, you know, make the ideal time, I think she ideally was going to compete next year. So we were thinking, just as a couple, we might prep together.
Yep.
And just see how we go with, you know, experiencing that type of thing. So yeah, that might be another reason why I may just decide to compete next year. Alberto, I got from his first, we've only done one like check-in together, and he reckons, you know, just really focus on gaining until the middle of next year, and then assess where I'm at and maybe start prep in the middle of the next year, or the end of next year. So I guess there's a few different possibilities on the cards.
And how big are you then? I mean, give the people some, that are listening some context, because you're a big boy, like height, weight.
Well, at the moment, I'm about 98 kilos as of this, because I haven't weighed myself for a couple of days, I realized. I'm supposed to weigh myself every day. About 98 kilos. So I'm 6'1" as well. And look, the heaviest I've been, with a little bit higher body fat than I have at the moment, a few percent higher than I am now, would have been probably in 2015, and I was about 105, 106 kilos at the biggest in my off season. On stage, I'm usually in the high 80s in terms of kilograms. So like, I think like 88 or 89 kilos. If I prepped from like where I am right now, I'm guessing I'd probably be more like between 85, 86 and there. So yeah, that probably gives,
Yep.
A bit of a rough idea. I should probably post a few more photos than I do, so you can anybody can just can just see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, take a look at Evan if you haven't already. Yeah, I've been following you for a handful of years now, and yeah, I've seen the pictures of you with Berto, which are super cool, and yeah, impressive, man.
Was probably the first time I met Alberto was at Lane's VIP camp 2013 in Florida. So yeah, that was in the middle of my off season before, and then after that I worked with him for the next season. But yeah, some of my best photos with him at that time.
Right on. Do you coach as well, man? I can't remember if you said that.
I used to. Now I work in healthcare. Okay. So I was doing that from around probably after I won my pro card. About a year later I started coaching people, mostly online, a little bit of personal training as well. And I did that up until really when I started my post-grad degree, and then kind of just like kept like less, a handful of people or so on, but those people mostly were non-competitors at that time when I was studying. So yeah, I did a lot of my coaching between those years, and now I work in medical ultrasound. So I guess most people think ultrasound like scanning pregnant women for babies, so it's like that, and a lot of the rest of the body. Like I work a lot with veins and arteries and scan a lot of varicose veins and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I spend my week doing that now, and then my after hours doing my training and all that stuff.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, buddy. I know this was probably a bit of a challenge to lock in the times, but I'm glad we could sort it out.
Yeah. Thank you for having on.
No worries, man.
Absolutely. How'd you come across us? Just a quick question.
Good point. I think I just followed you guys on Instagram, the natural bodybuilding page. I forget, it was like Natty Bodybuilding or something like that. And it was probably through, I don't know how, whether it came up through somebody else had shared it. It was probably Alberto had shared it, because I look at a lot of his stuff. And whether he was featured on there at some point or something like that. And I was like, okay. And then I saw your page just like kind of growing. And then I saw this, the podcast just like a week or two ago. And I was like, okay. And just, that was pretty much it.
Sweet.
Cool, man. Yeah, it's been cool to Leroy. We talked that it's been super cool to see this grow. So
it's like our little child blossoming.
Yeah. It's really good. I think we need more visibility for natural bodybuilding. So it's good to have people just focusing on that.
I appreciate it, man. Plug the Instagram, man. Where can people find you?
It's just Evan Soon, so EVANS, 4 O's and then an N. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, like I don't have a business page or anything like that. I'll post a little bit of my life stuff on there, probably less than I should. But I post more on the stories than on the actual posts these days. Yeah.
No, that's cool. All right, people. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. You guys heard his Instagram there, so give him a follow, show him some support. And again, man, we appreciate you coming on. And thank you guys for watching. If you guys did enjoy the episode, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel for future episodes, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Natty_news_daily. And we'll see you guys in the next one.